Hi, everybody. I'm Veronica Falandino. My pronouns are she, her. I'm the Assistant Dean for Undergraduate Admissions and Student Services. And I'm so excited to get the chance to talk with four of our amazing Stampers today. Can't wait to hear about your perspectives and your experiences and really get to know you a little bit better if we haven't really had the chance to connect before. I know you're going to have a wide range of stories and just lived experiences to share with the other members of our community. So thank you each so much for joining us today. I think just to get started, it would be really helpful if we could go around the room and I'll prompt you so that we know who's going next. But if you could share your name, your class year, your specific program, because I know we have a nice range represented in this group, maybe your hometown. And if there's anything you'd like to share about your creative practice, what are you focusing on right now? I'm going to throw those items into chat too, because I know when you're doing introductions, it can get kind of funny to remember all of the things that you've got to cover. But Gabe, if you wouldn't mind getting us started while I throw that in chat, that'd be great.
Thanks, Veronica. My name is Gabriel. I am a fourth year student, so class of 2022. I'm dual enrolled, so that means I'm in the art school getting a BFA in art and design, and then I'm also in the College of LSA getting a degree in American culture. And because of that, I might actually be class of 2023, but we'll see how that works out. Right now, I'm focusing in ceramic work. I've been doing some work in the RC studio, the residential college, instead of the actual stamp studio. But I've been working on that for the past couple semesters, and I'm aiming to continue that practice, as well as my graphic design work alongside that. My hometown is Sterling Heights.
Great, thanks so much, Gabriel. Nikki, would you like to go next? And then we'll do Miles and Lucy. It's kind of the order I see you in on my screen.
Great, I'm Nicole, but I go by Nikki, and I'm also a senior, so class of 2022. I'm an Inner Arts Performance BFA, which is a BFA that's dually in the Stamps Art and Design School and the School of Music, Theater, and Dance. My hometown is West Palm Beach, Florida, and my focus is interdisciplinary multimedia performing work, and that's what my thesis is going to be this year as well.
I'm really excited for you to get to connect with our big for Inner Arts, our big incoming cohort of Inner Arts students.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing.
Yeah, I'm excited for that group. Great, Miles.
Yeah, my name is Miles. I'm also in the Stamp School of Art and Design. I'm class of 2022, so I'm a senior this year. My hometown is Seattle, Washington, so I'm a little far from home. And I'm mostly focusing on industrial and product design. I'm really interested in the transportation mobility sector. And so I think my IP, my senior project will be based on a lot of that kind of stuff. And I'm also getting a minor in entrepreneurship.
That's great. Thank you for sharing. All right, Lucy.
Yeah, my name is Lucy Sun. I'm currently I'm third year. I'm a third year here at Stamps. I'm pursuing a dual degree with art and mechanical engineering, so I'm also over at the COE. I'm from Overland Park, Kansas, which is a suburb just out of Kansas City. And my focus is in illustration and digital design. And yeah, that's it. And I'm supposed to graduate still in 2023 because I'm only staying half a year after my 4 years are over.
That's great. It's an exciting time. I know time is slippery and it can get tricky to keep track of where things are at, but you're all moving closer and closer to that end. I think it'd be great if we could get started by having each of you try to get yourselves back to that beginning place when you first came across Stamps or when you were first thinking about where you might want to pursue your art or design education. What was it about Stamps that drew you? Can you recall what it was that made that connection and helped you decide that this is where you wanted to pursue your education? And you're welcome to go in any order, but if we hit any quiet pockets, I'll start calling on folks.
I can go first. So what initially drew me to Stamps was that it allowed for a dual degree program and allowed for the flexibility of you to kind of pick your own path rather than have the school pick it for you. One of the other colleges I was considering had like interdisciplinary programs, but they had like very strict guidelines. So if you wanted to do business and art, you had to go into a specific sector of business and a specific sector of art. And if you wanted to go into engineering, you had to do like computer science alongside like digital design. So it was kind of limiting when it came to other schools, and it was really important for me to have something that it like interdisciplinary and flexible. So that's what really drew me to stamps initially.
My process was a little bit different because I came from a performing arts high school for theater where I did acting and scenic design. And with the representation of University of Michigan, so many of my fellow students were auditioning for that school. And I found myself stuck between, am I going to go to school for acting? Am I going to go to school for scenic design? And then I stumbled upon the Inner Arts Performance program, which is truly deeply unique, like very unique program across the country. And it just kind of clicked. It's like, this is my path. This is where I need to be. This is combination of everything and plus opportunities to grow further. And that's exactly what it has been.
And I had similar, sorry, I'm jumping in again, sorry, Gabriel. And I had similar experiences in that most of my high school experience was STEM, and I did mostly STEM classes. I didn't take any art classes in high school. It was just mostly a passion. But then this really pushed me over the edge and allowed me to like pursue both things. Yeah. Sorry, I'll pass it on.
Yeah, I can talk a little bit about my draw with stamps because I think that it's pretty similar to Lucy's. I went to an international baccalaureate high school, so my high school experience was very interdisciplinary from the start. I was taking art electives and full-on higher level IB art courses, as well as pretty rigorous academic work. And at the tail end of my time there, I think I applied to like 14 different universities, a lot of which were dedicated private art schools. And through a lot of the application process, I was pretty dead set on going to a school like Parsons or Pratt. And it wasn't until pretty late in the decision process that I figured out that I wanted to come to Stamps. And I think a lot of what drew me here was the ability to focus equally on my academic work as I could on my artwork. And I think that that's been really, I underestimated how important that would be to me because I'm now majoring in American culture. And I think that a lot of the stuff that I'm studying there, diaspora studies, ethnic studies, food studies even, is really informative to a lot of my current artwork. And I don't think that's something I would have been able to even approach at all if I was at a school that was only doing art studies.
Yeah, I think I can agree with a lot what Gabe has to say about that. Like Stamps and University of Michigan alone wasn't really on my radar when I was first touring, and then I started looking at programs, and I knew I wanted to do design coming out of high school, so that was a start for me. So I started looking at places that had opportunities like that, and Stamps came across as one of those places, like Gabe said, that offered more than just like the rigorous studio work and allowed you to kind of explore different areas of interest. And a lot of other places that I've looked at, their programs are like, you're doing this X, Y, and Z, and this is how you're going to do it. Like they're telling you exactly how you want it. And I found the unique like curriculum, picker, that whatever you want to call the Stamps like style program, but the way you can choose your own classes and kind of create your own curriculum, very interesting and like very cool, and something that was very different and unique in that sense. And so that's kind of why I chose Stamps. And then, once I came into it, just the facilities and everything just felt just right. And the community that they had felt really like similar to what I had at high school. And that was kind of comforting for me. And I felt like it just was a good fit.
Yeah, I mean, what I love and is not at all surprising, right? Even though you are all coming from pretty like different methods of education from your high school backgrounds and have a completely different varied sets of interests in your own art and design practice, like there's this theme of having the ability to dip out of art and design and really connect with the academic content that's available at the University of Michigan. And what I like is it's not just exploring academic areas of interest to explore, which is great and completely useful, but I also hear bringing it back into your own creative practice and using what you're like learning in academic settings to fuel what you're doing in the studio, and seeing connection between those things. I'm glad that you've all had the opportunity to come here and make the most of those sorts of opportunities that happen when you've got, that small art and design school in that greater context of the University of Michigan. Yeah, I've got, I think, another group question, and then I might go into some individual questions for folks. But now that you're here and you've experienced what you have so far at Stamps, could you share a particular opportunity or experience that's really shaped your overall Stamps experience?
I would say for me, I think something that was really important for me, like a turning point in I guess my creative practice was sophomore studio. That was like a time for me that I just realized a lot about my process and kind of where I wanted to go from there. And I think a part of that had to do with that was when the pandemic was hitting. So there was a lot of, uncertainty and ambiguity, but it was a time for me to kind of reflect on where I was at. And I kind of did a whole 180 on my project and did something completely different, halfway through the semester, and had to restart. And so that whole kind of learning process and going through that challenge was just very eye-opening to me and kind of taught me a lot about, what type of designer or creative person I wanted to be moving forward and how I wanted to go about, how I work and what kind of stuff I want to create. And so that was really, I think, important for me. And I always look back at that time as being very influential to now when I do my work. A lot of stuff that I learned from there is showing up now, senior year, junior year, whatever. Even working in the summer and stuff like that. So I think that, and that's a middle point, right, at Stamps. So it's kind of good timing because you're trying to flip a page, I guess you could say. But yeah, I think sophomore studio definitely.
For me, reflecting on my past as a theater maker, I was typically telling, other people's stories, and every semester Inner Arts has a forum called Inner Arts Forum, where all Inner Arts students are together and we have a performance opportunity at the end. So there's a guaranteed audience and performance that we all have to make our own work for. And that was something I'd never done, writing and producing and doing projections for other people's work and collaborating. It's just a very fulfilling space. And so that series of the forum every year has just fully developed my artistry and expanded it with the collaboration between all the inner artists.
Yeah, I think if I had to identify one moment that was the most impactful in my Stamps experience so far, it would probably be the molds and mold making course that I took in my sophomore year. I was taking that concurrently with my sophomore studio, and I think taking those two at the same time really changed how I thought about my own practice and my own work and the trajectory that I took after that. That course was with Lou Marinero, who is a super talented sculptor. I think he's since retired, unfortunately, but he taught us in this way that at first I felt was a little bit antiquated. He was teaching us to make sculpture, which meant very strictly not utilitarian objects, not characters. They were sculptures. And he was really trying to hammer that into us. And, it was annoying at first to me because I, now doing a lot of ceramic work, wanted to make things like reproducible cups and stuff like that. But his way of teaching us and his way that he had us look at sculptural work and 3D work, I think was really pivotal for my processes going forward. And I was doing sophomore studio at the same time where I was working on a fibers and fashion project. And that was what I had come into Stamps thinking that I wanted to pursue pretty solidly. And the combination of doing that in sophomore studio while working on sculpture with Lou, I think totally shook me out of that. Not in any bad way, but I have since moved very far away from fiber work. And I think that, if I'd gone to another art program at a different school, where you kind of have to decide your discipline going in, whereas at Stamps, you can be taking different classes in different areas all at the same time. I don't think I would have had that pivotal moment where I knew that, okay, maybe this is not for me, maybe I should try a different avenue?
I guess one thing that's really notable for me was it was my textiles and fibers class that I took with Anna Cookie-Patelli. And I love her so much. She is great. And just the way that it was such a rigorous course. Like I hadn't experienced a course like that before where there was like something to do every week. And like that was the one class where I really had like a great bond with everyone in the like all the people that we worked with, especially in the studio, because that was the fall after COVID. And just being in that studio with like that environment with like other students, just like spread across the room because there's only like 5 of us in the room at a time. And it was such like a hands-on class. And like typically I don't do like fibers or anything. I just wanted to like take new like courses to like learn new things because I know that I am pretty confident in my like illustration path, but I do love like branching out and exploring. Like I don't know, it's just something that I love to do. And I also did like ceramics for my sophomore studio because I did it for my sophomore studio because I liked experimenting with it in high school during lunch and stuff like that. So yeah, just having that experience of like really good studio time with just a certain amount of people. We were in there every single weekend, like Friday through Sunday. We were always there because there's just so much work that we had to go through, and we were like dyeing fabric. We were just helping each other out. It was epitome of like art school and just supportive friends and supportive artists. Yeah, that's mine that I can think of.
That's great. I mean, certainly something that I hear as a theme through all of that is your own willingness to be open to the experience and to feel that you can be in like this supportive environment where it's safe to try something totally new, to like have a complete 180 in your sophomore year review project and like completely change things like that. That takes bravery and a willingness to like throw yourself into something that can feel completely new and unknown. And it's exciting to see like that you allow yourself to be open to that change and open to doing something new and exploring where, you know, a class that might seem, you know, not quite the thing that you want to do, but allowing yourself to be influenced and changed by it. And so it's just, I think you have to really come with an open heart in a lot of ways and allow yourself to really flow with what you're learning in the program. So it's great to hear you pulling out those themes and those experiences. I'm going to ask a couple of individual questions. And if I don't ask you, you're like, oh, I wish she called on me for that question. I really want to share this. Like totally do. Just jump in, share. We'll do a couple of individual questions. I'll shift back to a group question. So feel free to chime in if I don't in particular call on you, because I'm going to be doing it pretty randomly. How about Miles? Could you share a little bit about what's been one of the favorite things from your time at Stamps? Maybe it's a class, professor, studio, student group experience, anything really that comes to mind, and share a little bit about why that experience really stands out to you.
Yeah, I was just thinking about this actually. I would probably say my favorite class so far, which it could be beat this year because I'm doing change by design. We're going back and forth to Detroit, so that could be a contender. But IPD, integrated product development, I think was super cool. And we did it all through COVID, so it was mostly online. But even then, like, I mean, just between Stephanie Tharp, who teaches it on the stamp side, and Eric, I'm forgetting his last name, teaches us the IOE kind of business side of it. Just the two of them did like an exceptional job teaching it with the circumstances that they had. Just between the group work that we did at, it was super cool, realistic experience. And basically, for everyone that doesn't know what it is, you get a challenge at the beginning of the semester, like a problem like X, like this, something's wrong with this, and find a solution-driven approach to fix it. Through design, through business, through all types of different disciplines that come together through different schools, and then you're paired up with a team of people. Usually, you are the main person in your discipline. So, like, I was the only designer or person from Stamps on my team, and then you basically come up with a solution to that challenge, that problem throughout the entire semester. And it's from start to finish. You're supposed to have the idea all the way to implementation and costing and production, like the whole 9 yards of like what a life cycle or process of a product would go through from start to beginning. it was just super cool, super informative, a lot of fun. I think I always say to this day, like that's like the best team I've ever worked on. And it's kind of surprising to me that that's the case when we were completely on Zoom. Like I hardly met these people in real life. So I just think the whole experience was really cool. I think it's a very unique experience on campus, especially for those interested in design or anyone in the other disciplines, if it's business too, like, and you want to work on a product driven team or company, like that kind of stuff is super and informative for them as well. And it just like you are like the guy of expertise, the person of expertise on your team, right? So it's like it's all on you to have the answers or figure out the solutions to the creative problems, or if it's like the guy in engineering, figuring out all the like technicalities or whatever to it. And so you get a really good like understanding of how you react in those situations and how others do and working with the team. And so yeah, I think that is to this day my favorite class experience. And I would do it again if in person, if we could. So
That's great. And I think, what you'll find too is that for so many of our students, once they graduate, if they're going into more of like this corporate context where they're working on these cross-functional teams, like that's going to be your work experience too, the experience you just had on that team. Like you're the expert in your area, you're bringing the art and design lens, and then you're working with people from all these other functional areas, like towards a shared goal and working on something together. But you get to be the expert in your area.
Right. Yeah. And I think it helped, being in the pandemic as well, like it made for some really interesting questions, like solutions, challenges, because obviously that semester was all COVID based. So it was about, how do we create more connections and meaningful engagements between people in COVID. When we were, especially at that time, we were extremely distant. That was, the peak of it. So that also just added to like the well, I don't want to say fun because it was not a fun time, but the experience of working in that environment.
Yeah, that might be a good point to really transition to going back to sharing as a group. How have the last, year and a half plus impacted you since the times started? Is there something that stands out as a particular challenge? And then hopefully also maybe something that stands out as you were sharing that's a positive outcome from the pandemic experiences you've had so far?
I can start. I think one of the biggest things that I've taken away from this past year and a half is kind of a newfound ability to do my work anywhere, and not just like academic reading, writing type of work. But I feel like I've learned to adapt my art practice to be able to do it anywhere. Pre-COVID, I was kind of shocked to like realize that I even did this, but I realized in my sophomore year, I didn't even have a desk in my room. It was just my bed because I never worked at home. I always either went to the studio or went to the library to do work. And fast forward to my junior year, which was last year, mostly fully remote, going into the studio very sporadically just because of how frequently things were changing during COVID. And there was a point where I was doing entire ceramic projects on my desktop in my bedroom, which was smaller than the one that I didn't have a desk in. And I think even though that was kind of like a crunch situation where I was learning to make the best out of a crappy setup, I think it had a very important effect on my practice going forward from that. Because now I'm in my third house in Ann Arbor, and the first thing I had to set up was my workspace and my desktop. So it's been really important learning and getting out of that mode and realizing that I can create and produce work anywhere that I am. It doesn't have to be in an area where there are tools for me.
I mean, okay, so there's like three different like little like phases I guess you could say of my little quarantine moment. Just going off of Gabriel though, I actually learned to like get out more instead of staying in my room all day. Cause I used to just like do work on my bed. Like that's all I used to do. And I had a desk and I sometimes like sat down and like drew stuff, like the bigger stuff that needed to be done. But typically I would like stay in my bed, have like, cause I didn't have that many courses that pushed me to like go out and stuff because I did do a lot of stuff in high school and things like that. So a lot of the courses that I took were mostly exploratory courses I've just like I've just revisited because I took jewelry in high school and I wanted to take it again just to kind of like re-experience it. I took textiles and I took like a drawing class, like a visualizing and depicting ideas to like continue on my illustration drawing, that kind of path. So it was just a whole bunch of like experiences for me and just kind of how to how to navigate that and like such studio intensive like coursework. Like I could saw like metal in my house if I wanted to, but I didn't really want to. So I did enjoy going to the studio and having like a few people there since we were like following social distancing guidelines. But it was very nice just going in on the weekends and doing your studio work. And it was just kind of like nice and meditative because it would just be myself. Since freshman year in the dorms, I would like work out in the hallway and there'd be so many people around me and it would be like, yeah, it was just really fun. So I had like moments of peace and I had moments of like cooperation, as I said, where it was just a bunch of people, like five or so people in like the studio, and we just kind of like worked together, and it was just really fun. And then the second semester after that, it was a little bit less. I stayed inside a bit more since I didn't have too many courses that was too like intensive, but it was still relatively great. I was able to like talk with more people online. I found because it was fun using the chat function and just like complimenting people, and that's how you can like start conversations. So like if you have any digital classes, it's a lot easier to like private message someone being like, oh my god, I love your work so much, like than just saying it in the middle of class. Like, so I think just making those connections is a lot better. And then this past summer, I actually like really tested my limits. Sorry if I'm talking so much. In that I took courses at two schools, and then I also took an internship on too, and they overlapped very heavily. So it was just me seeing how much time I could crunch out, like how much time I could use with time I didn't have. But it all worked out in the end, and I was able to like. It was just a very hectic summer, but I had it was a great learning experience. And just I don't think I would be able to do that if it were not for COVID, since a lot of things would have to be in person. I wouldn't have been able to like progress towards my degree as much as I could if it were not for like online classes and this sort. Yeah.
For me, as many, I found it very difficult to harness any sort of motivation through, the loss of normalcy, the loss of life, all that grief was just so heavy. And so being able to think in the short term was really helpful for me because it was impossible to think in the long term. So I started creating small projects just for myself, whether that be some sort of photo shoot just for Instagram or small TikToks, things that weren't necessarily big classwork items, but small things that I could control, that I could produce and just have something out there, because obviously performance opportunities were shut down. I mean, through video, there was some aspect of that, but the loss of audience, the loss of connection with people was a huge thing. And then connecting to TikTok very much has been radicalized and have exited that as a, raging feminist. And so it was helpful in the way of being able to focus on new things, but I'm very happy now to slowly get back to the way things were before.
Miles, do you want to share anything about your experiences this last period of time?
Yeah. I was just thinking. I think it was. Stamps is so hands-on, right? It's like this. I mean, the school is part of like going there and the equipment and all the stuff that there is to use. Like it's very like you go there, you don't do work at home, you go and do your stuff there, and you take advantage of what you're here for, to use those facilities to get used to using stuff like that and learning that kind of stuff. And it was kind of discouraging, last year, just because I felt like you had to focus so much on like the protocols and like what was going on in the world and COVID, and it didn't allow, like, at least for me, it didn't allow me like a lot. I didn't feel like I was allowing myself enough time to focus on my actual work. Like if I wanted to go to the stamps building, I felt like I had to do this so much work
understand like I'm doing the right thing, I'm being safe, I'm wearing my mask, like what are the policies, like what times are available, just to get to use something there. And at that point, I was just like, is it even worth it to put more energy in to figure out how to even get into the building and work than actually working on my actual, assignments or projects? And so I obviously did go up to the building a fair amount, but it was just hard, and like finding that new normal was challenging for me. And while also trying to maintain that level of expectation of like the work that I'm trying to produce, and that it's satisfying me as well. So that balancing all that was really challenging. But at the same time, you look at it, and like I said, like IPD was my favorite class and experience so far, and that was during that time. So then there's positives to it, and there's ways you just have to think about it and adapt to that works for you, that suits you. And I think that was important and key for me in my learning during that time period. Even now, just like being able to be like light on your feet, nimble, be able ready to switch, at a moment's notice. And now that we've kind of gone through it, just kind of take what we've learned and move along with what's working well for you. But yeah, it was definitely a challenging time. So.
I will
Yeah,
say all throughout, I felt very supported by many of the STAMPS faculty and all my people who know that performing is such a big part of our artistry, understanding that, and that our professors are artists too, and they were going through the same things we were as students.
yeah, there definitely is something to like that, the shared experience of it all, and knowing that, I mean, it's an interesting push-pull between, some of us finding ways of taking experiences that we might have had contained to the studio and finding ways of bringing them into our home life. And I think, when I think of long-term effects of that, you might find periods of time in your life where you don't have access to the kind of studios that you have here at Stamps. But if you've built into your practice ways of engaging in your craft in atypical spaces, you've had a taste of that already. And so if you find yourselves in similar circumstances, after graduation, that shift, that like the bleeding of where it happens, from studio to home to other environments, can be helpful in some ways. But yeah, of course, it's also really limiting to not be able to come in, use all of the facilities, engage with your fellow students and instructors in ways that we used to. And so I'm excited for this fall and having to be, almost entirely in person. I also like that doesn't just make it all better, right? Like if there's still a transition period, it's like you have to build up your muscles again to like being around people in large quantities, like having like the physical practice of coming into the building all the time and to do all this work. And like, that's great. And it's great to have that opportunity back again. But I also hope that all of you and that, your fellow students, take time to allow for that adjustment. Like I personally know I went to the fall welcome yesterday. I was ready for bed by like 9 o'clock. I'm like, okay, I have like these muscles have atrophied over time and I need to build it back up again. And to just be patient with myself and know that it will take time. Even if it's exciting, it still like comes with its own set of emotions, and like, that's okay. And we're all here as a community and working through it together. So I hope you're all giving yourselves, be gentle with yourselves and give yourself time to make these adjustments, even if we can be excited about them. Yeah.
And I would like to add that like just the experience on campus last year versus this year, and especially freshman year, is so jarring. The peace that I had last year was so nice, and like I wish I could have it back, because coming back to like cramped like streets, like buses can't even pass because of all the students like walking, like all these long lines and all these cramped buses. It really makes me miss kind of just being on a bus by myself or like just being in a room by myself. So it's just I like it's, I mean, I'm glad things are getting back into normalcy, and like last few years or the last year and a half has been rough for many people, including myself, but just kind of missing that like tranquility of like surrounding is a little sad. But yeah.
Thankfully, they've made changes to the buses, so that will help a little bit. But yeah, just the whole like the life cycle of campus, once the school year starts, you go from like a quiet and chill 4 months of summer to like all of a sudden, all at once, you just flip a switch and it's fire hoses going off everywhere, and it just changes instantaneously. And so it can be a bit bumpy in the beginning as we're trying to adjust to like completely different shift and like pace of life, for the good, but also like it takes time. Yeah. Nikki, can you think a little bit and share with us how you've grown in your creative practice while at Stamps?
Extremely so. As I hinted at before, I really thought that I had to choose one path as an artist. And then coming here, that notion was just completely ripped away in the best way. And I used to also think that being a jack of all trades was a negative, as if, that's a means and master of none. But I found that all of these different aspects that I've learned here with learning film with Cynthia Patikra, and learning performance art with Amelia White and Holly Hughes, and learning how to write and learning painting, all of these things combined to my work. And I've been able to develop myself as an interdisciplinary artist, and being able to combine all those things in the pieces I make. And it feels right. It feels like the art I'm creating for the first time feels right and feels fully my own. And yeah, it's just, I'm more and more excited to learn all these more aspects that can drive into my own personal practice.
Yeah, I want to say something out loud that Lucy put in the chat. I was going to share this with you too. If it gives you some amount of peace, the full quote, which almost no one like uses, jack of all trades, master of none, but better than a master of one. So versatility is actually like, it's the good thing. And people, I think, just drop the part that makes that quote whole, right? And I think it's so the folks who have that natural attraction to versatility, I also think have a natural attraction to Stamps because of just the range of things that you can explore, and that's how we're structured, and that's what we want you to do. Yeah.
Yes, that full quote was my sophomore studio theme.
I love that. That's fantastic. How did that play out in the work that you did for that?
I developed writing music for the first time, and that I felt like writing music combined a lot of things, from writing to performing to all the digital aspects, to creating set pieces with performing, and that's also to do with my thesis. I'll be performing a one-woman show combining all these aspects, and being, the jack of all trades.
How exciting. I can't wait to see that.
Thank you.
Yeah. Gabe, can you tell us a little bit about some of your favorite things to do outside of the classroom or studio?
For sure. One of the things that I do most frequently, I guess a lot of people wouldn't even count it as like a pastime or something, but I really love to cook. I cook almost every day. Right now it's a little bit slower getting back into it because I've been living in my parents' house for so long where I get meals. But I love to cook. I love to experiment culinarily and try out new recipes and dishes from ethnic traditions and cultural traditions that I've never had before. And I promise that like every one of your hobbies won't relate to your art practice. But I do find that cooking and eating informs a lot of the art that I make and a lot of the ideas that I have. I found myself thinking about like, how flavor combinations and texture combinations work, like color combinations or things like that. The vessels that I'm eating out of play a big role in the vessels that I try to make in my own practice. And I think that that's a side of myself that I have really gotten in touch with a lot more since I've been at school. When you're on your own and you have to cook for yourself, it can become something of like a necessity, I guess. You're eating just for sustenance. But because I grew up in such like a food-centered family and culture, that was not enough for me. And I had to learn to cook because I wanted to eat good food and I didn't want to spend the money to eat out every single night. So learning that just by doing it every single day and seeing the different things that I can learn how to do, a lot of it becomes intuitive. And it really does feel like an art practice sometimes. But yeah, that would be my most frequent out of the studio practice.
I love that how, art and design just kind of becomes a lens through which you might experience life. You're like, you can't help that these things that you're interested in and that you're doing every day sort of interact with that lens. And that's fun to see. Any favorite dishes? Or do you work from a recipe, or do you like to just like go crazy and go from scratch once you're in the kitchen?
It's a mixture of both. I'll usually find a recipe and adapt it in some way, combine multiple recipes. I'm a vegetarian, so I have to figure out how to make a lot of the meat dishes that I loved as a kid friendly with my current diet. But yeah, favorite dishes. I make a lot of
cuisine.
Sorry, what'd you say?
Or types of cuisine, if you don't want to narrow it down to one thing.
Yeah, I cook not a ton, but I've experimented with a couple different types of Indian dishes, which I never really had growing up. My parents never really made that until my other siblings became vegetarian or vegan as well. Those have been really good and really fun to experiment with, just because the ingredients that a lot of Indian cuisine uses are so different from anything else. Even from the Arabic cuisine that I grew up really adjacent to, it's striking because I would think that there would be a lot more crossover between the two cuisines, but it's like almost none. And there's so many ingredients that are entirely unique to that Indian food. So yeah, that's definitely one of my favorite areas to experiment in.
That's great. Thanks for sharing. Lucy, could you think about, the time that you still have left at the University of Michigan? Is there one thing you want to make sure you try or do while you're at the University of Michigan?
Okay, that's a tough question. I've done quite a bit, but I definitely want to go on like some road trips with friends, just out, because we're not like super close to everything, but we're like close enough that it's within like a day trip or like weekend trip distance. So once restrictions kind of lift, I'd like to go up to Canada for a little bit. I'd like to go to like Chicago, things like that. Just like have a little spin around with friends, in terms of like personal life wise. Education wise, I've been so jumbled up right now with like all my classes, since there's practically no crossover between mechanical engineering and illustration. So I've just been trying to like cram classes in and get things done. But I would like to like participate a little bit more within like some clubs, some activities, doing some other stuff around the like campus and things like that. So yeah, that's just something that's been on my bucket list.
Nice. And then you mentioned bucket list. So Miles, coming from Seattle, did you have like an Ann Arbor bucket list of any variety? And have you done things on that list, or is there anything left still that you want to make sure you do before you graduate?
Yeah, I didn't have a bucket list. No. I think as I've been here, I've progressed. I've obviously learned about things to do and heard about stuff I need to go try. And I think, if you're thinking directionally like east west, I've covered a lot of ground there, but I've never been up to the UP. I've never been up north, and that's a. If I leave here without that, I don't know. I might get some weird faces when I say I've never been to the UP after 4 years of basically living here. So that's definitely on the bucket list. The pandemic obviously kind of like took some of that opportunity away. Just not even because it was not hard to get to outside, just because the people didn't want to go out, stuff like that. So yeah, I think that might be like one of the breaks we have this year maybe, or graduation like right after kind of thing with the family. So we'll see, but that's like Mackinac Island, the Upper Peninsula, all that kind of stuff. Seeing all that's definitely on the bucket list, sightseeing and travel wise. But yeah, I've done tons of stuff. I went to Grand Rapids for creative reasons and just to see, visiting some of the furniture places over there in Grand Rapids, and then obviously Detroit and the Motor City, and there's tons of stuff to do down there. So yeah, I need to get up north.
I can add something to that, but and like things that I haven't done where like you think I would have done it. I've never been to a football game. It's my 3rd year here, never been to a football game.
Uh,
I don't really plan on going to a football game. I know someone who's been here for 10 years, like in his doctorate, never gone to a football game either. So like he like it's just it doesn't have to like what Michigan is known for doesn't have to define your experience here. I'll probably go if I ever get the like chance to, like, and it's convenient for me, but it's not something that I'm like actively looking to do. Like I haven't really gone to any sports games in particular either. But yeah, it all depends on like what you want to do, like here at Stamps and like here at Michigan, and you don't have to let like other people's experiences define that for you. Yeah.
I love that you get to decide what Michigan means to you. That's great. Yeah. Have other folks been to a football game? I'm curious.
I'm a senior and
that takes some strong resistance to 10 years. Woo, that's impressive.
He like that like you meet so many people here, and he's someone that I met because like I started playing outdoor volleyball up on Pierpont Commons, like the little volleyball court, and you just meet so many different kinds of people there, and like it's a bunch of graduate students, some undergraduates, and we started playing up there because of COVID and stuff, and it was outdoor and like regulation friendly, so it was just nice meeting everyone. Everyone was safe and wore a mask, and just that group was really nice. So this is really fun meeting a whole bunch of different people and just kind of going out and exploring a little bit.
Yeah, I think to that point, like, and you said, Veronica, like I'm from Seattle, so I knew 0 people here. I had hardly any idea of the landscape of this place when I came. And Michigan has so much stuff to offer, like especially peak non-COVID times, and everything's full-fledged. There's so many clubs, there's so many people, there's so many things to do, events, between the school and the town of Ann Arbor. And so like really trying to like find your circle, like your community within that larger space is definitely it's something that's challenging, but I think when you truly find it, like that's when you call Michigan home. And I think that's like the cool part about having such a big school like this is, it might feel intimidating at first, but once you pick out your 4 or 5 things you want to do, your friend groups, the things that you enjoy doing here, like it really becomes a small circle. Like does not feel very big anymore to me, walking around and seeing people, even with the overwhelming amount of people coming back to school here for after the pandemic. So.
And on that point, so many of the schools I had applied to were in cities, and though while University of Michigan was my top choice, in the back of my mind was always, oh geez, Ann Arbor. I didn't really know much about it. I was a Floridian. The cold was definitely a factor. But then once arriving here, realizing that University of Michigan is so much Ann Arbor, and there's so much always going on with the university that I feel like juggling both a city and everything going on in a city and the university would have been just too much for me. And so being able to fully dive into the university and here in lovely Ann Arbor has really been amazing. And also connecting back to cities, I plan on being cities in the rest of my life. So having these 4 years in a small town is a great experience, and one that I probably won't have in the future, but I've been very grateful for.
That's a great perspective to have.
Yeah, and it's such a big campus that, like, as she said, like there are like many colleges that I've considered that were in the like big city where people are like the city is your campus, but the campus is the city basically here. So it's just really it's a really nice experience being able to have like that walkability, that like explorability that you don't really need. Like you can obviously have like public transport to help you with, but it's not like far enough that you need to like have a car or anything to like get places. And just there's just this phenomena like that I've experienced where you like recognize many faces because of like the routine that you have. So you just see like the same people on the bus, or like you see the same people in like dining areas and like things like that, where it's not small enough that like everybody knows everybody, but it's big enough that like it's small enough that you can like recognize faces and like meet new people and have like start new conversations with someone new every day. Yeah.
Great. Well, I think we're going to start wrapping up. So I have one last question for all of you, and that's to really think on, for future stampers, and it might be about stamps, the university, being an artist and designer, what are any words of wisdom that you could share with the next generation of stampers?
I would say experiment, experiment, experiment. I thought that this was like my final landing point, and then I needed to figure out what I was going to do for my art practice by the time that I got here. And I realized that this is really just, for me at least, it doesn't have to be for you, but for me, this is another 4 years of trying to figure that out. I've learned from my time here that I'm probably going to do much more school after this. And I think that it is really important to just take advantage of like all of the crazy different things and facilities and machines that you have access to here, and push yourself out of your boundaries and get your hands dirty in some things that you wouldn't have thought that you wanted to.
Yeah,
I'd say that, oh, sorry, go on.
Going off of Gabe, I think like having an open mind, really leaving opportunity on the table, especially when you first get here, it's important. Like, don't be set on anything, especially at stamps, right? Where they want you to explore and try new things before you come to a decision on what you want to like focus on. And just be open to the ambiguity and the changing times that you're going to go through. Like nothing is set, and really just put yourself out there and try new things, because it's kind of time to do it. And like Gabe was also saying, Michigan has so many resources that like it's virtually impossible to fail if you really go out there and find it and seek the help and do the work and just work hard at what you're trying to achieve. And I think it'll all work out in the end. I knew I wanted to come in and do design, right? But there's so many things I didn't realize about what that meant until I went through stamps. I went through the entrepreneurship mind. I did try these clubs, met these people, talked to these professors. So I think in that sense, just really being open to a lot of different things and a lot of new things that are going to kind of change and shape your life moving forward is important.
Yeah, and like hopping on off Gabriel's point, just like experimenting, exploring. The amount of studio hours you get as a BFA is like insane, and just use that to your best of your capability. I'm only BA right now as is, and I'm still pushing it a little bit with my other classes, but I wish I was able to like branch out a bit more with like other classes that I wasn't able to take, like other introductory classes. Like I want to do more printmaking, I want to do some sculpture, I want to do things like that, like paper making too, because I just love and I'll end up doing those in my free time and just like getting the materials and doing it myself. But just having that is always really fun. And then just branching off, my biggest thing is just talk to people, like have the like just open up, branch out, like just like have the courage to like talk to someone new, especially within like your classes. Like it's just so nice having the support system and having friends and just like being able to like ask people for help and just talk to people and like rely on people and being relied on is such a like just a wonderful feeling, especially as an artist. And yeah, and like go to like many events as just like they'll like you'll get emails sent out to you like, oh, here's an event for like alumni coming back and visiting, and we can like pair you off and talk to them, and you can ask them questions and stuff. Like, so it's just fun to like, it's just fun to meet new people. I just love meeting new people. It's really great. And just having that experience, just talking to teachers, talking to other people, that's my biggest like takeaway from stamps and biggest advice.
I second what everyone said. Expanding and exploring, that's what's going to carry me after my education here to New York, where I have no idea what I'm going to do, but I'm not worried about it because of the confidence that I've built here within my artistry, and just like go blue.
That's fantastic. It has really been such a treat to get to hear from all of you today. I really appreciate the time and thoughtfulness that you spent with us. And it's just been really great getting to hear from your experiences and your stories. For me, it's been such a great reminder of what an honor and a privilege it is to get to work with students like you every day. I personally find it really invigorating. I know the faculty and staff here do too. I, of course, look forward to the day when maybe we can have this conversation in person, or I can see you in the hallways and say hello. But until that day happens more consistently, I hope you all stay involved and stay creative, stay safe. And I can't wait to really get to reconnect with you again in person sometime in the near future. So Gabe, Nikki, Miles, Lucy, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. I know that everyone else will really get to benefit from the stories and experiences that you've shared with us today. So take care. Go Blue.